Welcome back to Analytical Media. We are a consortium, a group of therapists, college professors, and well-published, peer-reviewed authors. If you're interested in psychopathy, you can find our book on that subject entitled Descent into Darkness at Amazon.com. The book analyzes the murder of Travis Alexander by Jodi Ann Arias from the perspective of psychopathy. I guarantee you, virtually every aspect of psychopathy will be covered in that large work. Today's question: what is sociopathy and psychopathy? Is one the same as the other? Are they different? Why are there different terms? This is a very common question. Plenty of people say sociopathy or sociopath, and plenty of people say psychopath. What's the difference? Is there a difference? Well, some people claim there is a difference. One of the largest mental health channels on YouTube claims there is a difference. Goes on to describe sociopathy and psychopathy in great detail, pointing out all the differences between the two. And for their definition of sociopath or sociopathy, they give us a definition right out of a dictionary. And the same thing's true for psychopath or for psychopathy. The definition right out of a dictionary. Now, this isn't a mental health dictionary. This isn't a dictionary put out by the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. Not that they put out dictionaries, they don't. It's a regular, standard, look it up dictionary. Now, that's a little bit disingenuous, or perhaps much more than just a little bit. And why do I say that? Because there is psychopathy and sociopathy. These things are described by people who describe them. They describe them as mental disorders. This is a mental health disorder, both of these. People who describe it, people who define it. And yet, these terms do not appear in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, version 6, or version 5. In fact, the term psychopathy does not appear at all at any time since the inception of the DSM. Sociopathy was referred to, not listed as a disorder, wasn't defined as a disorder, but it was mentioned in reference to antisocial or disorders like that in version 1 of the DSM. Since then, not a mention of either. Do you know what that means? It means you cannot be listed as possessing a mental health disorder if it's not listed in the DSM. It's all there. And if it ain't there, there's no insurance reimbursement. There's no diagnosis, no diagnostic code. If you've ever been diagnosed with a mental health disorder, personality disorder of any sort, a neurosis, a psychosis, it must be listed in the DSM. If it's not in the DSM, you don't have it. Interestingly, at one point in time, homosexuality was listed in the DSM. It had a diagnostic code, but wisely, it was gotten rid of. So you could have been treated for homosexuality. Your insurance company would have reimbursed you for the treatment. But then the next year, no. Because they said, no, it's not a disorder of any kind. No more coverage. No more labeling someone mentally ill because they happen to be homosexual. Well, that was a good thing. You corrected a mistake. But my point is, if it's not listed in there, you can't have it. you can't be treated for it. There's no treatment for a mental disorder that does not exist. So remember, there is no psychopathy in the DSM. There is no sociopathy in the DSM. You can't be treated for either one. You cannot go to a therapist in America and be treated for either one of those things, because they're not in the DSM. It's an important point. It's not a technicality. It's much more than that. It's to make it clear that the DSM is the be-all and end-all. They revise it from time to time, but it's an attempt to list every mental health condition that exists and the proper technique to give someone a diagnosis of that mental health disorder or condition. Now, you wouldn't think that other people then could use sociopath or psychopath to have any meaning at all when it isn't in the DSM. But they do. They go on and on about the differences between a sociopath. They got cute little things like the psychopath can't care about you, but the sociopath, it doesn't care that it doesn't care about you. Cute little things. None of which is supported by mainstream psychology, because mainstream psychology is the DSM. So all the distinctions, all the ways to tell a sociopath from a psychopath, those things simply are nonsense. They're total nonsense. Where's the official source for this information? There is none, because there's only one source, and that's the DSM, and the DSM doesn't even mention these things. Now, we know psychopathy is a very real thing because the rest of the world does recognize it, does mention it, does have standards for diagnosis. The rest of the world, not the United States, but everywhere else. Virtually. Here, to roughly mean the same thing as psychopath, is antisocial personality disorder. Antisocial personality disorder. It's similar. It's in the right ballpark for psychopathy. None of us here at Analytical Media agree with the choice of the DSM to ignore psychopathy and go with antisocial. It's been listed as a political decision and went back to a certain period of time. It was a political type thing. It was a disagreement between people who had the biggest stick, who had the most power, and antisocial won, and it's been ignored ever since. Is that true? I can't say for sure. Unless you had a time machine, I doubt that anyone could say for sure. Unless you could move back in time and be there at these meetings, at these discussions. But at least we have a rough equivalence between psychopathy and antisocial. A rough equivalence. However, there is no sociopathy. There's no equivalence to a sociopath. How other people use the term sociopath. What's the equivalent in the DSM? There is none. Though people will disagree with us, I'm sure, and that's their right to do it. Personally, I think that people who use the term sociopath are either mistakenly ignoring the correct term, which would be psychopathy, or has no idea what they're talking about. They may be saying, well, you know what, a sociopath is kind of like a psychopath, just not as bad. Psychopath's really bad, sociopath not so bad. When he's bad, he'll kill you, but he doesn't have to kill you. It's for them, it seems to be a lesser degree of sociopath, or they make no distinction between the two terms. They probably make no distinction because sociopath has no meaning, so how could you distinguish it from psychopath? Don't think that this is impossible, that a term comes into usage and has no validity whatsoever. Do not think that's impossible. It's quite possible. People on the periphery of mental health can move towards different terms and terminologies. I mean, it's pretty hard. You're going way out there at the end of the branch when you're suggesting that sociopath is not a term with any validity. But not in terms of the vast majority of mainstream clinicians and theorists, not in the field of mental health or psychology. I have heard many lectures, I've seen recorded presentations by the biggest names in the field of psychology, and I have never heard the term sociopath used. Has it been used? Maybe. Not saying otherwise, but I'm telling you my experience and the experience of the Analytical Media organization. Could you get by in life writing scientific papers and never use the term sociopath? You could. You don't have to use it. There's no technical distinction because it's not a mental health disorder if it's not in the DSM, and it's not in the DSM. And it's not like there's something else in the DSM that's like sociopath. There's something in the DSM that's like psychopath, and that's antisocial. That's it. Antisocial is as close to sociopath as you'll ever come. Since sociopath has no meaning, no technical meaning, antisocial is meant to take the place of psychopath, psychopathy. It's also, if you take your time to think about it, those of you who want to think of something a little deeper, more profoundly, why is it that the United States does not consider psychopathy to be a mental illness? Why is it not recognized when it is recognized in the rest of the world? Does the United States have some power to diverge from the world in an area, in a psychological study? It's interesting, if nothing else, if you never answer the question, why no psychopathy, why they have antisocial instead of psychopathy, if you can never answer that question, it's enough that you note the question. That you note, that is a valid question. How is this possible? Everything else is virtually identical in the rest of the world, but not psychopathy. And as I said, and that's fine, if you want to say antisocial is psychopathy, fine. But don't try to dream up a new condition, sociopathy. The sociopath, personally, and I speak for myself only, not Analytical Media, personally, I think when somebody says sociopath, they have no idea what they're saying. Sounds good. You heard it before, hear it all the time. Sociopath, sociopath, sociopath. It's kind of like a bad person. It's a disease of society, the sociopath. But I'm telling you, it's not recognized. Not in the mental health fields, not in psychology, psychiatry. And if it's not in the DSM, you don't have it. You can't be treated for a disease, a mental health disorder, personality disorder that does not exist. And if it's not in the DSM, it doesn't exist. Look, the DSM's online. Look up sociopathy. Look up sociopath in the DSM. See what you find. You'll find nothing. It won't say online, well, no sociopath, but there is A, B, C, and D, which is sociopath. No, nothing like that. There's no distinction. It is not technically a lesser form of psychopathy. And maybe some academic fields prefer a term like sociopath rather than psychopath. Maybe that's what's said. I don't know that it's true, but maybe that is what is said in meetings with historians, history professors, sociology professors, perhaps. Certainly not social psychology professors. So whoever's making a distinction, they have created that distinction themselves, or are reinforcing a distinction that some unofficial source has created. And I think the final word on this subject from me will be, you need to be careful what you believe. You need to investigate everything that's being told to you in a book, on a website, on a channel. Look it up. I know it takes effort, but it's readily available. I would encourage you to check every fact we've given you. You can check for yourself. The DSM is online. You can access it for free anytime. Read it yourself. It doesn't take a degree to read the DSM. It certainly doesn't take any advanced degrees and any credentials whatsoever. Read it for yourself. It's crystal clear. But you're not going to read about psychopathy. They will try to show you sleight of hands, the substitution of psychopathy with antisocial. But there's nothing like that with sociopath or sociopathy, because it's just not in there. There is no distinction. And the fact that one of the biggest channels on YouTube dealing with mental health suggests there is disheartening at best. Check it out for yourself. Okay, we are Analytical Media, trying to show you things in more depth, to get into things of importance, things that really matter. If we've helped, we have accomplished our goal. And if we haven't, we'll try on the next one. Maybe we'll get you on the next one. Pass this along to someone you like, someone you think might benefit from this, and subscribe if you want to be a part of more of this that's happening in the future. This is Analytical Media. We'll see you on the next post.